What is going on, Nuggets Nation NBA fans? My name is Tom Leuthner. Welcome back to another episode of Nuggets Today, presented by Fan Arch. As you guys could see, the view behind me is different. Officially in my new apartment. Sorry about the little 2-day hiatus I took celebrating the engagement party, and then with the move and everything, I just couldn't get around to 2 episodes. So I did want to bring up some things from Game 1 of the Denver Nuggets preseason. This is being recorded before Game 2, and that will be next episode. But I want to break down some things, and the first thing I want to break down is actually Jalen Pickett, just because you guys know how I feel about Jalen Pickett. But it was actually a good game for him. You can't be too mad. There's still the highs and lows, I feel, of his game. To see his three-point shooting ability was nice. I think that he's trying to carve out a role, and Denver might want him to carve out a role to be a guy who can just strictly shoot around Jokic, especially if he's going to get minutes when it comes to the playoffs or deep down in the season if somebody goes down. The thing that I just see in Jalen Pickett whenever he plays, and I think this is my biggest knock on him, if you want to say anything, is just his ball handling does not look good. It looks awful, in my opinion. He looks very uncoordinated and not ready to dribble the ball. Even on his step back three, he sort of just threw the ball out in front of him, and I think that's one of Denver's flaws and weak points at this part of the season. They don't have a legitimate backup ball handler. We saw that with Bruce a little bit where, they sort of attacked him, and not that he can't handle the ball, but when they attack, and this is something that I think I was nervous about, and just about every Denver fan I felt was nervous about right before the season, is just they're when they get attacked, they don't have somebody that seems too confident with the ball to really, knock off the defenders and sort of just create that space. Now, like I said, Bruce is a good ball handler. He's not a great ball handler, and he can handle the ball if you need him to. But if it comes to a pressure situation where you have a guy like Jamal who's not in the game, and your ball handler, and Jokic even is out of the game, you're going to have to rely on a guy like Cam Johnson to be able to play extended minutes with that bench unit, or a guy like Bruce to be able to carry, handle the ball, Julian Strawther to be able to handle the ball. So, like I said, the one knock I have with Pickett is just him looking so uncoordinated and messy with the ball when he is handling it. But it's nice to see him actually be able to shoot well and play a good role for the first game of at least of preseason. But the next person I want to hop into is a newer addition to Denver, and that is Tim Hardaway Jr. Now, I thought that I still do. I think that Tim is going to be one of the biggest keys for Denver to actually be a great team this year. He's a bench guy who can literally just do exactly what you need him to do, and that is hitting threes from the corner, hitting threes from the wing, playing alongside Jokic and being that guy that Jokic has to dish it to. But he cannot shoot that poor from the three-point line, or that poorly from the three-point line, if he wants to remain a Denver Nugget, in my opinion. I don't think that Denver will trade him, but Denver has this weird I don't even know how to explain it, history, I guess, of bringing in vets that they think are going to be good, and they end up not being good. Dario Saric was a main point of that. You look at Saric a year or two before they got him, and he was actually a good backup. He was a guy who could come in, he could play. And I remember my first game watching him play with Denver. I think he airballed a three, and it wasn't even close. And not that Russ was expected to be anything more than what Russ was, but I think the same goes for Russ. DeMarcus Cousins came in after his injury, and granted, he was good for Denver, but at that time, you're expecting so much more, and you're not really getting it. But I think DeAndre played his role very well. But Tim Hardaway Jr. cannot be a guy who's going to come in and not be able to shoot when they brought him in for him to shoot. And maybe he thinks he's lost a step, and that's why he signed a 1-year vet minimum, because I think he could have gotten more. But like I said, he cannot shoot that poorly. When he was brought in to be a strict shooter for the Denver Nuggets around guys like Val and Nikola Jokic. And I know it is preseason, so I don't want to overreact too much, but you need to see more. You do. And, the same goes for Cam Johnson, which is, I'm going to hold that off till next episode, depending on how he does in the second game. Like I said, this is being recorded before the second game starts, but Tim cannot shoot that poorly. You need to do something. And if you don't, then that's when a guy like Julian Strawther, or even Jalen Pickett at this point, is going to come and take your rotational spot. And that's what I want to cover here. This is more not just the last roster spot, but the last rotational spot as well. I think that it's been more motivating for anybody on the end of this Denver team just to, get the last rotational spot, last roster spot secured. And I think I covered it, a little bit this offseason where maybe one of those guys from the two-way contract will be a guy who's going to be signed for the remainder of the season when that point comes, and they're able to actually, make a difference, whether that be Tamar Bates, Curtis Jones, Spencer Jones, any of the three. But it also comes down to Kessler Edwards and Moses Brown, and who will get the last roster spot, if anybody, or if either of them. And who will be better, I guess, if you bring them in. But, I mean, Moses is a guy that I just genuinely am happy watching sometimes. He's come into the NBA. I know people hate this, and it's a hot take, but I don't know. It's just something about watching him. Comes into the NBA, he has his games where he puts up 10 and 5 or 10 and 8. And I think he had one game where he put up like 21 and 8 or 21 and 7 or something like that, along those lines at least. And he came in for Denver, and he played 4 minutes, and he put up 8 points and 3 rebounds. I mean, it's not this massive stat booster who's going to make your team or make or break your team. But he's a guy who, if you can come in and give Denver 8 points and 3 rebounds in 4 minutes, then why not just bring him in? And I think that it also opens up the possibilities of playing Duran and Zeke Naji even, who actually looked pretty good off the dribble at first, and playing them at the 4 and being able to have a guy like Moses, sort of lock down the paint. It also gives you size at 7'3". Like I said, I'm not saying he's the best player in the league or this guy who's going to make or break the Denver Nuggets, but a team that's always lacks size, and you have a guy like Val who might miss some times, a guy like Jokic who might need a break here and there. Why not bring in a guy like Moses Brown? And I don't think that it feeds into Duran Holmes' playing time as much. I think it feeds more into a guy like Zeke Naji's maybe, because, like I said, Naji's been there for a while. I think Duran still gets his run at the power forward position, especially next to a guy like Moses, and you don't have to force a 6'10 guy to be a center, which might be the fact that Zeke Naji didn't pan out the way you really wanted him to. Maybe it's just because he's not good enough, but you also forced him to be a 5 when he wasn't a 5. And then you also have a guy like Peyton Watson who could slide up to the 3 spot in that 5. And you could run Peyton Watson, Duran Holmes, and Moses Brown together if that's your case. And that's your third stringers, which I think that kind of third unit is great. But Hunter Tyson looked good. Spencer Jones, Curtis Jones, and Tamar Bates all had 0 points. They didn't do anything realistically. But like I said, there's a couple guys fighting for that last, not only roster spot, but the last spot or two in the rotation as well. And the last topic I want to get into here is just some news from around the league. One thing I think is so funny is all the hype that DeAndre Ayton got going to the Los Angeles Lakers. For him, I think game 1 he had 1 point. Game 2 I think he had like 7 and 7. So it just makes me laugh a little bit with all the hype that he got, and everybody's LeBron and Luka are gonna be these the next big three with DeAndre Ayton there. And I just think he's an above average Jackson Hayes. Realistically, he has more talent. He's a better skill set, but at the same time, he's not this guy who's gonna make or break everything, and he's gonna be better than a guy like Jackson Hayes really was for them. Will be better, but he's not going to be anything special that's going to force a championship for their run. I think that they have some good bench guys now with Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart, but I just don't think that DeAndre Ayton makes that leap, so I thought it was pretty funny to have him not play well his first 2 games. But that's all I got for you guys today, Nuggets Nation. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I'm happy to be back. I hope that you guys are happy to watch again. And like I said, I'm going to have a breakdown of Game 2 next episode. So like I said, leave a comment, hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.